Good morning.
Welcome
to today's class. My name is Jon Witt, and this is my son Noah. It's a Hatha yoga class, a base level class to help build good yoga practice. Today's class, I'm going to be working towards it's a bit of rehabilitation for the knees, but I'm going to work towards getting into like a low level squat. And you could have a chair if you can't squat below 90 degrees. And a lot of it is preparing the tissues. So the squat in itself will help create the range of motion to get you to sit lower. And you have to be patient with it. You could work on it every day. And as time goes on, you'll be able to squat lower and lower. It's very rare, but there are some people that can't squat with their feet flat because of their bone structure. But other than that, most people can squat. I mean, if you could remember when you were a child, you most were likely able to squat. So it's just a matter of working towards that again. So these are the techniques that I've been using for many, many, many years. I'll be doing a course in February. It's a teacher training course. It's through the Prema Yoga Institute. I'm co-leading it with my friend Dana Slamp, the founder of the Institute. And it's to help people teach in more of a therapeutic setting like a clinic or a hospital using yoga techniques. So that's the month of February. So in February, I won't be teaching this class, but I'll resume the class in March. But if that's a course that you'd like to take, all the information's on my website, and it's also through Prema Yoga Institute. So I hope the class has been helping you. You could always give me feedback. I'd love to help you as much as I can. So how we're going to start is you're just basically going to have your hands behind you, and I'm just hooking my thumbs, and I'm just coming into a posterior tilt, and I'm going to lift up on my toes, and I could be using a wall to support myself, and if you want to stay up on the toes, you could certainly do that, but I'm going to come down with the heels, and then I'm going to lift up, and then I'm going to slowly lower. Really great to do on a curb or a step. When you go lower than, say, the floor, you'll get more dorsiflexion. That's really a big part of squatting, right? I'm going to lower the heels. I'm going to bring myself back up on my toes. I'm going to lower the heels and bringing myself up. So if I'm a person that has knee pain, keeping your legs straight and strong throughout the day is very, very beneficial. So if like, say, anytime you bend your knee kind of aches. I would work on more calf raises one day, and then I work on lifting the front of the foot on the opposing days. And both of those will help increasing the range of motion within the knee because it's going to build the muscles around the lower limbs, and then eventually you'll be able to squat more, right? So I'm just going to have my hands out in front of me for a counterbalance, and then I'm just going to bend the knees, and I don't have to bend them very much. And then I'm going to come up. So if you don't need your arms forward, you don't need to. But if you lack flexibility in the ankle, you'll probably need something to support yourself in terms of like a wall or a chair or having your hands forward. I have an external weight, a sandbag. So when we do get later in the class in terms of squatting, you can use that to counter the balance. So when I'm coming down, as you warm up, you're welcome to sit lower, and you don't have to sit as low as I am. I think a 90-degree angle is a great angle to find. And then, like I said, as the tissues get stronger and they build up, you'll be able to squat more lower than, say, this angle of 90 degrees. So you can come up, and then when you come up, just move the weight into the outsides of the feet. So stretch. I'm just in the right foot here. If it's a lot of weight or too much weight, keep the weight in the left foot. You could use a wall so that there's not so much weight in where it shouldn't hurt. And then I'm going to roll into my left side. So I'm leaning into the foot, into the ankle. Just take a couple deep breaths. And you might see that one foot is just more stiff. You can work on that side more. I'm going to go back into the right. And then going back into the left, and then coming back into the middle. So just take the arms into a cactus position and just open and close the hands. So as you're opening and closing the hands, good for circulation, good for external rotation of the arms. The better your posture is, the easier it is to squat. If you really have a hard time in terms of standing, sitting, it makes it more complicated to squat. I'm going to take the arms all the way up overhead, and I'm going to bring my shoulders up to my ears. So I'm really lifting up out of my arms, push through the feet, and then just go back into the cactus position, just a general warm-up, right? And then go back to taking the arms up, try to get the shoulders to the ears. That's great. And then you can bring the arms back to cactus, and you can bring the arms back down. So just take the left leg up into the chest. So I'm bringing my hand just above my knee, and I'm trying to bring my knee into my chest. And then I'm going to take it out to the left a bit, and then I'm going to bring it out. Not that all the way is best, but it can help with external rotation, which helps with squatting. So I'm going to take it forward, and I will use my hands. And it's okay if you lean back a little bit, right? So if you lean back, it's just a sign that you have, you struggle with hip compression. So some people really struggle with this. So what you could do is put a washcloth in between the bones. Something like that would pad, because when you pull it up, it might be like bone on bone. So you could use something to help, and this will help with the squat. Then you can bring the foot down, then bringing the right leg up. So my right hand's just above my knee, and I'm lifting the knee into the hand as a marker, so just so that I can get stronger through my abdominals, and then increasing my hip compression. So I'm going to bring it out just a quarter of the way, and then maybe out all the way. Again, if I struggled more on all the way out, then that's what I would focus on. And it may be different each time you do it. Sometimes it might be more central is the angle that you need. Again, I'm going to take it up, and again, you can keep holding the wall. I'm going to pull the leg in. So this is more passive flexibility, and then bringing the leg down. So I'm going to go back into some squats again. So I'm going to take the arms forward if I need it. If you want to be have more challenge, my hands are behind my head, and I'm just going to squat, just air squats. So if I had a chair, what I would do is I'd sit just above the chair, but then I would come back up, right? And say coming up and down irritates any, just statically hold the position. So, because if you come up and down and you're like, wow, my knees are really achy, just hold statically. Both could be really, really good for you, but you got to know what's best for yourself. So if I do squat all the way down, great. And then I'm going to come up and then taking the arms down. So I'm going to go into stretching at the quadriceps. So take the left leg up, hold your left shin or your foot, and then as you're taking it up, this is more passive flexibility. So I'm pulling it up. Take 3 deep breaths. And when you're holding the foot, you can try to keep it up more with the strength of the hamstring. So if the hamstring's really weak, obviously affects the knee. You can bring the left foot down and then taking the right leg up. And hamstrings, unless you're a runner, typically are pretty weak for most people. Unless you do a lot of back bending like bridge and wheel, those types of poses really strengthen the hamstrings. But if you're not doing running or back extensions like I just mentioned, hamstrings can get pretty weak. And then you can bring the right foot down. So just take the feet out a little bit wider than the shoulders. And I'm going to be having my feet turned out. And then I'm going to bend my knees and I'm going to be into a horse stance. You can have your arms however you want them. They could be in the cactus position. They could be out wide. They could be like Noah's in his taekwondo stance. It could be a lot of things. So I'm going to come up and I'm just going to take the arms down just to relax the shoulders. And then I'm going to sit down. So this is something, not holding it really long. So like 10, 20 seconds is what I'm using. But then I'm doing multiple repetitions, which, the stronger your legs are, the easier it is to squat. And you can bring yourself up. So you can bend the knees, and you might be like, wow, I don't really need this, but at some point you probably will. So I like to keep it. If I'm starting to lose it, that's usually when people are more interested in it. And then I'm going to bring myself up, and then one last time I'm going to sit down. Now sit not as low as you can go, sit a little bit higher, which actually will require more strength. And then as you do fatigue, you can start to sit a little bit lower, and then maybe you're increasing the capacity, but kind of see what's holding you back from squatting lower. And then you can bring yourself back up into a standing position. So I'm just going to stretch out the hamstrings a little bit just to give you a bit of variety. Doesn't really factor so much into squatting, but I think doing multiple things I think is a good practice in any practice. So my feet are 3 feet apart, and I'm going to have my hands on my pelvis, and I'm anterior tilting the pelvis to come forward, and I'm extending through my upper back. And then I'm going to come up, and then I'm going to come forward. Feel free to get lower than I am, or hold it statically. But I've mentioned this before in other classes. When you come up, when you first enter the pose, that's going to be the greatest sensation of stretch, right? You're going to be like, wow, my leg is stretching so much when I first enter the position. So I'm coming up, and then I'm going to do it one more time. So when I come forward and I come down, again, it's just like when I get into it, the body is obviously going to a greater capacity. Then bring yourself up. You can turn the feet, turning on either the front of the foot or the heel of the foot is what you want to do to protect the knees. And then I'm coming forward, and as I'm coming forward, exposing my hamstring, keeping my back extended, and then bringing myself up. And even if I'm here, I still feel a stretch. So if you're concerned with your back, you don't have to get as low as I am, right? And, not that I don't like getting lower, it still stretches the leg, but I like focusing more on the hamstring if that's my focus. So I'm going to come forward. If I'm someone who had a really hard time with like plow, something like that pose, well, then it is good to get the hands down, because then you're going to stretch out more of your back and shoulders. Bring it up. And then one last time. So as you're coming forward, find the best angle. So here is a good stretch. Here is more. And then not necessarily lower is better, but if it's something that you can do today, you can. And then bringing yourself up, and then turning the left foot in. So a chair is really good for this next stretch. I'm going to stretch out the adductors, the interior of the legs, and all of this will make your warrior positions bigger. It'll create more global space for yourself. So I'm just in a wide stance, and then in a wide stance, I'm squeezing my legs in initially. So I'm hugging in, which will strengthen the adductors. So if you have very tight hips, it can be weak adductors. It can be very tight rotators. But for this, it's the adductors that I'm focusing on. And then just for a few seconds, think that your feet and your legs are lifting towards your hands, just as a marker. That's why I took the arms out. And then I'm going to bring the arms down. I'm going to toe heel the feet in, and then I'm just going to step the feet back together. So if, this is a lot for you, again, use a wall. I'm going to do it a couple more times. I'm going to step the feet out. I'm not going to do it as I would if I was practicing it on my own. So what you could start with is like 10 seconds to 20 seconds in this type of position. And then you come out, and you rest, 30 seconds to a minute, and then you go back into it. But each time you do it, you'll notice that the legs will get a little bit wider. And as you do get lower, what you can do, and I'm not going to do it today, is you could put an object underneath you. It could be an ottoman. It could be yoga blocks. You can get creative, whatever you have in your house in terms of just supporting you. So I'm going to toe heel the feet in, careful in coming out, and then just step the feet back into a neutral stance. A few breaths. So just for the sake of the video, just to speed it up, I'm going to come back into it. But rest if you need to, right? I'm going to take the feet out. And not that longer holds are better. Like I said, as you keep going into the pose, it just gets easier to expand out. Because you could kind of be in the same position for a while, or literally years. So expanding what your body knows is what's going to make it more progressive. So toe heel the feet in. Let's just say you're like, oh, I'm too far out. How do I come out? I would come forward with my hands. I'd bring my feet in closer together, and then I'd stand back up, right? Just in case you ever do come too far forward. I wouldn't do it in socks. Eventually, as you get more experience, you could certainly do it in socks. So I'm going to roll up my yoga mat, which will help with your ankles and being up. And then we can get more into sitting lower into the squat. So I roll up the mat. It could be just, a quarter of the way. If you had a really thin yoga mat, this is a thicker yoga mat, you could roll it up halfway. So as I come up, my heels are on the mat and my feet can be wider than my shoulders. My feet could be out. But I'm going to take the arms forward if I need it. I'm going to sit the hips back in space. So again, it really depends on how much your hips flex and how much your ankles flex, how well you'll squat. So when I move it, I'm just going to hold the static position, but just kind of notice that it's a little bit easier to say squat lower. And then I'm just going to do a few more. So I'm pulling back with the hips. I'm sitting into the heels. I'm bringing myself back up. Even if you have a good squat, this is good to do from time to time. Olympic weightlifters, they have big, thick heels in their shoes. So the heel's elevated. So when they squat really low weights, you did not know, it's much easier to squat. It's much easier to lift weights overhead. I'm going to come up. And then one more time, I'm going to sit height of my knees. Again, you got achy knees. Don't sit lower than the point of pain. Gradually increase the range of motion. And then maybe you can sit as low as, all the way down. Not that this is better. It's really not. It's just over a course of time, it can be. And that's why you'd want to do it. So when you're in a low squat, it's perfectly fine to round your back. But if you have a history of, let's say you have a history of herniation, you want to extend, you could look up even, and that can help your lower back. But if you have a yoga block, you could be on the second level, so you don't want to elevate the heels. I like the elevated heel version more because it's more weighted. There's more weight, and the tissues really need more weight for them to stretch out more. You need relaxation, but you also need stress in order to increase the range of motion. So say your legs are burning, obviously come out. So push through the heels. Let's say you couldn't come up out of this, right? Come forward onto your hands and your knees, bring yourself up. And then once you're all the way up, you could roll the mat back out. So I'm just going to do a warrior two. Maybe you can see the difference in your positions just as a test. Right, so I'm going to take the feet out nice and wide. I'm going to turn the right foot out to the right. I'm going to take the arms out. And then I'm going to bend my right knee. And then as I bend my right knee, I'm turning my hips to the left. And I'm turning my upper body to the right. If that's what you really need. But I think it's always good to kind of feel where does your body actually like to turn to. So if I have some scoliosis, I may actually want to turn to my left, depending on the person. So just because we've done a lot of bent knee positions, have the right leg straight. You could shorten the stance. I'll reach out to the right, and then you could grab the shin or the foot, and then just be high for a few breaths. Get a sense of that, and then you always have more time to get lower, right? I would see it all the time when I'm teaching a yoga class as people try to get lower and they just kind of get stuck in position. So it's very good to be up high, right? Adds a different element. And it is beneficial to get low, but you got to kind of see what is the best angle for you on the given day. You can come up, you can turn the right foot in and turn the left foot to the left. Some people need to hug in more. Some people need to push out. Play around with both. Take the arms wide. So if you notice, I'm not really that far out to the left. Something that you could do if you have back pain in triangle. It's very common. But if I am getting further lower, I'm pulling the hip back, not excessively. If I pull it back so much, I might actually feel some pain in the hip. I want to keep weight in the front of my foot as much as I have in the heel of the foot. I could be looking down. I don't have to look up. Looking up is good, right? And when you see an ad, that's a few seconds of a photo. It's not that you have to hold the same position the whole time. A yoga demonstration is very different than a yoga practice. You want to know the difference. You can bring yourself up, and then when you come up, you can turn the left foot in, and you can step the feet back into a neutral position. Just to give you some variety, I'm going to come down on the hands and the knees. And then as I'm on my hands and my knees, just to help stretch out the feet, I'll do some variations. So just be on the hands, push through the hands, round through the shoulders, use your hands, your fingertips, look forward, look up, you can back bend. Exhale, round your back, push through your hands, your fingertips, your knuckles, back bend again, try to lift the chin, lift the chest, and then rounding the spine, rounding your back, and then coming back to neutral. So just turn the hands out to the sides of the mat, and you might be like, oh, this is so great for my hands, my wrists. Your hands could be like this for any hand position. It's, you really don't need the hands forward. It's just more stress in the wrist, which is good, for the hands, the wrist, the forearms. But for some people, it might not be that great. So turn the hands to face one another and try to turn the hands in a little bit more. And just move the weight around in the hands to stretch out the hands, the wrist differently. So this rotates the shoulders in, which will help rotate the shoulders out. So I spend a lot of time on my hands, something that I do every day. It's kind of like one of the first things I'll do in the morning is I'll do a little bit of a wrist routine, and then mostly like spinal work. So then I'll take the hands back into the middle, and then I'll turn both of my hands back towards the knees, and then in moving the weight around, right, I want to sit in a corner of my hand that is tight. So as I find it, I may hold that for 10 seconds or something like that. I'm going to move the weight back, and not that the heel of the hand has to lift up, but it may, right? And short holds could be good. So say that's like really hard for you. You just turn the hands back for, a few seconds, and you turn them forward, and that could be your routine. So I'm going to have the hands forward where my index are forward or slightly turned out a little bit. So push through the hands, round through the shoulders, protract the shoulders. Not so much rounding the back, so it's different than cat. And then I'm going to lift the knees off the floor. I'm in plank, so I'm pushing the floor away from me. And as you're pushing, right, push like strong, push real strong, and then your arms may fatigue and you may have to come out, but it's better than just holding a long position. Take it up into a down dog. And then in a down dog, you can pedal the legs out, right? But just for the sake of the video, I'm going to come forward and through into an up dog. So come forward, come through, elevate the chin, elevate the chest, pull back up into a down dog. I'm going to do that one more time if I can. Come forward, come through, use your hands, lift your collarbone, squeeze your bum, and then pull back up into a down dog. So come forward into a plank, and then in plank, come down on the knees if you need to. I'm going to slowly lower, height of my elbows, all the way down, and arms will be beside me. So I'm going to lift my chin, my chest up off the floor. So into extension. Not that you have to get your feet together, but it will help in getting your glutes to be stronger. So I'm lifting when I can. And it could be, you be lower, right? You don't have to be up so high. So come all the way down and then bring the elbows underneath the shoulders or slightly more forward than the shoulders and glide your upper body forward. And I say this often in these classes, when your pelvis is down, it's much better for the lower back. So like let's say you do more up dog than you do Cobra, it might be why your back may hurt. Not that I have anything against up dog, but you don't really have the same kind of counter pull in the stretching of the position. So when my hips are down, it's like it's giving me traction into my back. When my hips are off the floor, it may be that I'm folding too much in my lower back. Right? This is very good. You could stay here. You can move the head around. I'm going to come down and do some Cobra. So bring your hands just underneath your shoulder. Come up into a low Cobra. Extend yourself up. Just a little bit higher than, say, Sphinx pose. Then bring yourself down. And then curl up into, say, something a little bit higher. But still my hips are down. I want to keep my hips on the ground if I can. Then bringing yourself forward. And just be patient. It might take some time, but your upper back will stretch out more. So lift yourself up a little bit. Say this is the level. Maybe come up a little bit higher. Right? If your hands are more forward than your shoulders, keep them there. As you progress and you develop, the hands can be underneath the shoulders, even further back towards the hips. So when you come down, slowly bring yourself down. Bring your hands just underneath your shoulders. Tuck the toes. Lift straight up to the top of a plank if you can. A push-up. And then come back down on the knees. So my knees are underneath me, or underneath my hips. My toes are tucked. And then I'm going to sit back towards the heels. These are, typically quite difficult for some people. Some people, this is nothing, just sit upright. But if it's like just painful, what I would do is I'd move back. You could come up for a few seconds and then come down. That's a great approach, rather than just being like, all right, I'm going to do a minute or 2 minutes. I'm just going to grit my teeth and get through it. Because there's no guarantee that you'll have the dexterity in the feet the next day. You won't. You just won't. It doesn't work like that. And you probably, you might hurt yourself in the process of doing it. So again, I could come down. I'm going to come down and then have the toes untucked, kind of like what we were doing in Cobra. And then I'm going to sit back. It's great to put your blocks underneath you, blankets, bolsters. Deep knee flexion is really, you need it for squatting. So some people, they just don't have that, in the knee. I'll show you a technique that's really easy to do and very good for the knee and sitting back like this. So come up into a down dog. Pull back through the thighs. And then as you pull back through the thighs, come forward and through into an up dog if you can. Move yourself through your arms. Again, you like the knees down, just bring them down, right? I'm, just doing it as an example. But they can be up. And then pull back up into a down dog. And then in down dog, I'm going to show you the technique of using your opposing leg to create, a lot of it is soft tissue work, calf muscle, gastrocnemius, all the Achilles tendon, all very tight. So this can help. You had a broomstick, you could just sit back on the broomstick. I think the shin is probably a little bit, it's not as invasive. So I'm going to have my shin on my calf muscle. So my right leg is on top of my left calf, my soleus, and then it's also a little bit, what sits underneath that is the gastroc. And then I'm going to move forward, and then I'm going to sit back. Now, if you have a thin yoga mat, double up the yoga mat so that the front of your knees aren't aching or hurting or whatever, right? But then I'm going to move back, and some people, when they do this, it can be a lot. And then for some people, it may feel like nothing. So if you already have deep knee flexion, this will probably feel pretty good for you, but it's not like necessary. But for those of you that can't bend your knees fully, this is very, very beneficial. So I'm going to come forward, and now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to tuck my shin behind the back of my knee, and then I'm going to sit back onto the leg. So it's kind of nice because it's going to stretch out the tissues, but it's also protecting the knee. Because if the knee doesn't flex fully, you're going to feel it in a particular part of the knee when you do this. So come back and then have the hands underneath the shoulders. Lift up into plank just to give your knees a little bit of a break. So lift up, press through the hands, go up into a down dog, paddle the legs out, feel the difference. I can get my left foot flat, like pretty easy after doing that. I can't do it on the right. So that, you'll kind of see the difference in the legs, and that's a great thing, and knowing that. So come down with the knees, and we're going to do the right side now. So my right knee is on top of my left shin is on top of my right calf muscle, and I'm sitting back on it. Like I said, if you don't feel much here in this angle, find a different angle. So if I was just practicing, this feels pretty good. Like it's tight, right? For me, it's a tight place. But I'm going to move it around just so that you have some variety. So I'm a little bit lower. So at the bottom of the calf muscle is more of the gastroc. So then my shin is on top of that, and then it's softening. This is a good spot as well for me. And then I'm sitting back. So I'm just above the Achilles tendon. Say that was nothing. The Achilles tendon sits just above the heel of the foot. So you can kind of sit back here. All these are good spots for me. Like I feel like it's doing something for myself. Even if you didn't feel anything, it's benefiting you. And that's something that, sometimes people totally disregard something. It's not that you should do it, but it is doing something for you. So I'm going to come forward, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck my shin directly behind the back of the knee, which there's a little muscle back there. It's the popliteus. So once you adjust that, it's kind of like a button. It's very easy to flex the knee. So I'm sitting back, which will, again, help you in squatting. So if you're done with that, come off the leg, have the hands just underneath the shoulders, press through the hands, protract the shoulders, lift up into plank, and go up into a down dog. So in a down dog, I'm going to make it shorter, purposely make it shorter, and then I'm just on my left foot, and I'm just moving the weight back into the heel. Just for a few seconds, and then just bring the weight into the toes, and then sit the weight back into the heel. So bring it into the heel, ribs are in. Bring it forward, bring it back. Again, that first motion into the pose, you're like, so, it's tight. And then you come forward. It's nice to have that break, but then coming into it again, you're training the body, but you're really training the nervous system for new ranges of motion, right? And then go into the right side and then sit back. So my stance is shorter. I'm bringing weight into the heel, and then I'm going to come forward a little bit, and then I'm going to sit back, purposely loading up the leg more, and then I'm coming forward, then I'm sitting back into the heel, coming forward, one more time back, and then forward. So walk the feet forward to the middle of your mat, walk your hands back towards your feet, and slowly roll yourself to standing. So all that will, again, help you in terms of sitting lower into a squat. But if you don't have an external weight, go back to rolling up the mat again, and we'll see how low you want to sit. You know, if you want to try it without the roll, you could certainly do that. You could start with the roll and come off the roll and do like a full low level squat. I'm going to use the external weight. So when I have it, I'm going to have it out in front of me. And then as I have it out in front of me, I'm going to take my feet, a little bit wider than my shoulders. Start with your feet turned out. And then when you grab the weight, it could be anything. It could be some laundry detergent. You don't have that, fill up a backpack with books. Just so that it's enough weight. I think 10 pounds is enough. This is under 10. So you're like, wow, 10's a lot. Use a lighter weight. If you don't necessarily know the weight, use a heavier weight, use a lighter weight. Find the right weight, because it's no like perfect weight. But with you holding a weight, it's much easier to squat. I could hold a wall, a big heavy table, but all this will help. And there's more progressive ways to help you with squatting, not just this. So like anything that you're using, if you're not getting the results that you want, keep researching and you'll find what you're looking for. That's how I've learned so many different techniques over the years. What worked for one person didn't work for another. So I just kept finding more and more techniques that work for people. And myself as well. If I wasn't necessarily happy with back bending or handstanding or squatting or, whatever it may be, I would research my own, on my own for my own benefit. So when I'm saying, because this is a little bit of a longer squat for you probably, is you can move the weight into your good foot, whichever foot that is. One foot will be more flexible than the other. So when it's really burning, you go into your good side. But then also go into your difficult side. And I can easily squat for more than 30 minutes if I want to longer. It's just, the only reason I'm squatting that long is because I'm doing something on my computer or my phone or something like that. I'm working. I'm not squatting. And I'm never squatting that long in practice. It's just I'm working on something. So I'm going to bring my hands behind me and I'm going to sit down. And then when I sit down, I'm going to take my legs forward and then I can circle my feet in a circular motion. And I was never really like, oh, I have to squat for X amount of time. It just has developed over the years, I fold my laundry like that. If I don't have a lot of time, like when I was in India, I cut my vegetables like that. But you don't have to do that. But when I play with Noah, we're squatting for hours, playing on the floor, cars, blocks. So I'm moving the feet around. And then I'm just going to point and flex the feet. So if you can, try to get the soles of your feet together. So if you can't, right, it's all right. So if that was difficult, separate the feet and try it again. And then if you can't, separate the feet, try it again. Same thing. You keep working it, you'll over time, most things you'll be able to get that range of motion again. So I'm going to have the knees bent, have the hands just underneath the shoulders. Turn the hands out and press through the hands. As you press through the hands, widen the shoulders, widen your back. Press through the hands, lift the hips off the floor. If you can't, retract the shoulders towards the wall that's behind you. So as you're moving your shoulders back into that position, press through the hands, the fingertips, and then bringing your hips down. And then with your hips down, what I'm going to do is have my right foot outside of my left hip and my left foot in front of my right knee. You could have your right leg straight out in front. So you say you got something going on with the knees. Probably better off to have the bottom leg straight. So I'm going to take my right arm across. I could do the classic twist that you're maybe familiar with. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep dropping my right shoulder. And as I drop my right shoulder, so if you run, you still lift weights, you're still very active, these muscles are going to be tight. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's good to stretch them out, which will help you and like I said, squatting. For you, it might be just recovery. So I'm just dropping the shoulder. I could support the head with my right hand. I could support it on the knee. But just like what I was saying about with triangle today, is it better for you to get lower, or is it better for you to sit up higher? You know, lower may look more impressive, but it might not actually serve you more. So that's why I say it. You know, when I'm teaching someone, it's very easy for me to see that they're doing too much. So I'll just asking them to do less. And I know it's better for them, especially if someone's really high strung. You don't want to just keep stressing yourself out mentally and physically. You can bring yourself up, and then you can undo the legs. And then just so that you can see, I'm going to have my left foot outside of my right hip, and then I'm going to bring my left arm around, and then just getting lower. And as I get lower with the shoulder, you know, you may feel that one hip is just tighter. Typically, I usually feel this more on my right side, but it's my left that I would work on more today. Again, I could brace the head on the knee, or I could brace the head with my left hand, right? And not that lower is better, but it's going to be more of a stretch in the hip. So kind of find there, but it's so good for your back, your shoulders. So if you're not doing plow, which, you know, not everybody is, you want to find ways to stretch out your back differently. So I'm going to bring it up, and then when I come up, I'm going to use a wall. You could sit in front of a piece of furniture, and then what I'm going to do is just going to have my back. You want your hips to be in whatever you're using. So when you pull your hips back in space, you just want them so that you can adjust the legs a bit better. So my feet are together and my knees are wide. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to push into the thighs, but I'm going to resist. So I'm resisting my legs. I'm resisting my hands. So I'm lifting my legs into my hands. If you have good strength, this could be 10 seconds. If you're not very strong, do it 3 to 5 seconds. And then just let that relax. And then we're going to do it again. So you can lift into the hands, the thighs. And you know, you could use weights if you've seen that variation. That's a good way. You know, you could lift the weights up and then lower them. That's a great way. But the hands, really same exercise. So you don't necessarily need dumbbells or kettlebells. I mean, if you have them, you could certainly use them for this position. So I'm lifting my legs up into my hands, and then I'm letting it relax, but then now I'm pushing my legs into the floor. I'm trying to get my knees down to the ground. You can also try to widen the legs. So often I'll teach it, you know, try to get your knees wider and your legs will get lower. So one more time, squeeze the legs into the hands. Really squeeze up. Nothing crazy, but you'll start to see and feel how the body will change. As you sit longer in this, you're going to notice that your hips are going to move away from your prop. So if you're using a wall, move your hips back into the wall. If you're using, like I'm not fully on my yoga mat, so I'm kind of slipping out. But if you want to keep your hips back. And that's like when you sit in a chair, don't let your lower back fall into the chair, you know, keep your body upright. So squeeze the legs into the hands and then push. You can push down with your hands to get your legs lower, right? You can do that. But I also like just using the strength of my legs. So my hips are getting stronger as well. And then, you know, that could be a 5-minute series, a 10-minute series. You know, start with 5 minutes. Very good for the hips. And then what you can do is I'm going to come forward and then sit cross-legged. So in sitting cross-legged, you might see like, oh, this is actually easier. So I'm just going to move my left hand to the left, just a basic stretch. I'm going to let my head tilt to the left shoulder. Move forward in space. Lean back in space if that's good for you. Move your head the whole time if you need it. Bring yourself up. Recross the legs just to kind of give you a nice closing. My right hand is up to the right. My left hand is up to the left. I'm leaning forward towards my Knees, it could be leaning back, it could be up high, there's no like one fixed way of doing it. I do it many ways so that you're benefiting in multiple ways. Don't get caught up in doing your yoga always the same way. You can bring yourself up, and I'm just sitting. So just take a few deep breaths, close your eyes if that's good for you. Keep your eyes open if it makes you anxious, right? It's perfectly fine that you don't close your eyes in practice. All right, I hope you had a great class. I had a good time today. I always enjoy these classes, so let me know how they're going. You could always leave me a comment. These classes are uploaded to my YouTube channel, so if you're not a subscriber yet, you could subscribe, you could like, you can share my information in any capacity. Say you really like social media, let people know that you're taking this class and that you're benefiting. It helps me help others. That's why I teach yoga. So have a beautiful weekend wherever you are in the world. I have a class tomorrow morning, and that's from 10 to 11 on Zoom. So if you'd like feedback in terms of practice, I could teach you anything you'd like, because we could see one another, and that's probably the best format in terms of helping someone. All right, take care, be well, and hopefully I'll have you in class in the near future. Remember, this class will not be going on in the month of February, but will resume in March. So you can always leave me comments, let me know what classes you'd like to partake in, and I can always develop them. All right,